Hello, my name is Maddie, or Books with Maddie, and today I'm doing my October wrap-up. I'm gonna address a couple elephants in the room. My hair is a new color. It looks black, but it's supposed to be blue. I dyed it at home because I was bored. This is the result. So we're gonna have to deal with this hair for a while. It just looks like it's kind of black. It really depends on the lighting what color. Hands are also bluish, and I think my neck is as well. So, in my next video, my hair probably won't look like this because I filmed another video pre-doing this to my hair. Today we're doing my October wrap-up. Yeah, we're just basically gonna get into it. I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared at all, but I do know that I read 13 books. I don't know what those books were. Let's just start going and see what I remember as I go. I'm not going to do these in any particular rating order because I don't remember them all right now. The first one that I'm going to talk about, though, is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. I listened to this in audiobook, so I don't own it, so I'm going to put it here. This is a book about a girl named Amira, I think, and she basically babysits for this really rich white lady who is kind of a performative activist, and she babysits her daughter for her. It has commentary on lots of different things: performative activism, police, like racial profiling, that's what I'm looking for, and things like that. I have mixed feelings about this book. It's always like weird for me, I feel like, when I comment on a book that's about something that I will never have to deal with, you know what I mean? But there were a couple things in here writing-wise that I'll comment on. I think I only gave this book 2 stars, honestly, which is a huge disappointment for me because I've heard like really great things about this book, but then when I was actually going through the reviews, a lot of people rated this low. First of all, the audiobook was really not good, would not recommend it. I didn't like the narrator at all. When the little girl that Amira was babysitting, she would go into like a baby voice that was like really cringy and really frustrating to listen to. So yeah, wouldn't really recommend the audiobook, but I feel like there was a lot of just not really great developed characters. I think the main character was really well written, but then the rest of her friends, like she had a friend group, were just like copy and paste of the same person. It was like they told us that they had different personalities, but it was never really shown that they had different personalities. That, and then the little girl that Amira babysat, I can't remember her name. She was supposed to be 3 years old, I think. And she was saying these really complex things that 3-year-olds don't say. It was just so unrealistic. I nannied a 3-year-old for a long time, and trust me, they do not say that. I babysit all the time. I babysit 3-year-olds. 5-year-olds don't say the things that this child was saying. Like, it was just so unrealistic, and it was Briar, that was her name. It was just supposed to show that this little girl was so special and everything, and kids don't say things like that. Like, maybe some of the things kids would have said, but a lot of the things, it was just like really unrealistic to expect or believe that a 3-year-old would say those things. Those are my main criticisms. I mean, the character development I think was poor. The one thing that really threw me off about this book and kind of gave me a bad first impression was there was a moment, it was towards the beginning of the book, where the main woman, the rich white woman, her husband is a news anchor, and he said something when he was doing the news that was, I can't even remember what it was, but it suggested that a black boy who was asking a girl out to prom needed to get permission from her father to ask her out because he was black. And it was like a mix of that's racist and that's old-fashioned and sexist. And there was this comment made by Alix, who was the main white rich woman, which was like, I hope that wasn't considered sexist or worse, racist, which is just a really weird thing to say, and I don't know if it was reflective of her beliefs or the author's beliefs that racism is worse than sexism, which is just a whole big problem that this is going on currently in these communities, trying to one-up the other one about which group is more oppressed when the oppression feeds into each other. So that is a huge problematic statement in my opinion, and was really turned me off to the book, because that is just one of the most problematic statements that exists in these communities today, is that one community matters more or is oppressed more or something because there is crossover. There's something called intersectionality, and all of these organizations and groups and movements will never succeed unless they work together. So unless sexism and racism are dealt with in the same movement. I've studied this for a really long time. So anyway, that is such a fun age. I gave it 2 stars. I wish I liked it more. Okay, next I read The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armaz. This is a romance about a woman who lies to her family about having a date to her sister's wedding and then ends up taking her coworker, who she basically hates. Her and her coworker Erin have this like rivalry, and so they pretend to switch enemies to lovers, fake dating at a wedding, and then they obviously end up falling in love. It was really good. I think I gave it 4 stars. Something about the ending kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I can't remember what it was. I always feel like there are certain romance books that are just like really cut short, and I felt like this was one of them. Like, I can't remember exactly what my thoughts were on this, but I only gave it 4 stars. I think everything at the end just kind of happened very fast, and then I just like can't remember all my thoughts. But that I gave 4 stars. I also read The Ark by Tori Henwood Hohen, I think is her name. This is an arc that I got, ironically, called The Ark. This is about a dating situation where this company called The Ark believes that they can find your perfect soulmate based on information about you. You basically go to this place called The Ark for, I believe it's a week, and you pay like a lot of money, like $40,000 I think, and maybe it's just $4,000. I felt like it might have been $40,000 though. And they basically do a bunch of testing, and then they basically tell you who your soulmate is. And it's about 2 people who take part in this ARC experiment situation and then get matched up with each other. And they basically are like, wow, this is amazing, but then things go wrong. They're like, wow, was the ARC wrong? And basically it just is about that kind of process, about can true love be constructed, or is it something that must be chosen? I liked this book. I gave it 3 stars, maybe. And I can make a more in-depth review of this book, like is it worth buying or not, because I think it's important when you receive ARCs to take specific time out to talk about whether that book was worth reading, who would like this book, and why not. I have a very comprehensive review of this book up on my Goodreads if you want to check that out. But I'm also thinking of starting a new series on my channel, which is like Arc of the Month, where I tell you about an arc that I read that month and whether or not it's worth reading. This book was really interesting overall, but I do really think that there are people who would really enjoy this book. There's a lot of like kind of dystopic elements to it that make you think about the way that technology is evolving in our society, but there also is a really great romance. So there's somewhere in between those 2 ideas, but let me know if you want a fuller video about this book. Okay, next I read We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This is a mystery thriller YA situation about a family who is very rich, and every summer they vacation on this island, and it's kind of just a mix of family drama and craziness. I don't want to say anything else really, because I enjoyed going into this book blind with like only that amount of information. This is like one of the most hyped like YA mystery thrillers, maybe the most hyped, and so I had a lot of really high expectations going into it, and I guessed the twist at the end. I totally guessed it. I totally saw it coming from like very early on in the book, so it was definitely disappointing. But there was a lot of other really good things that outweighed that disappointment. The writing was very intriguing. It was very readable. I think I read this in like 2 hours. It was really exciting to read, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the narrator. I think I possibly would have enjoyed this more when I was younger. It does have a very like YA vibe to it. I heard a lot of things about this book that just didn't really fulfill themselves in my experience. Like a lot of people like have huge like crying situation moments at the end of this book. I didn't cry at all, and a lot of people are like completely shocked by the twist at the end of this book, but I've seen this twist done multiple times, so I don't know why my experience was so different, but I still did give this 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. I really appreciated it for what it was, and I still recommend it to people who are interested in it, or people who are maybe a younger audience, or people who don't read a lot of thrillers. I think this could be a really fun and quick read. Okay, really quickly, I'm going to talk about Othello by William Shakespeare. If you're wondering why I'm reading so many Shakespeare plays, I have more to talk about every month. It's because I'm taking a Shakespeare class this semester, and we are like going through a bunch of Shakespeare's earlier plays, so that's why I have to talk so much about his plays in my wrap-ups and stuff. I will just disclaim this, as I usually do. I don't like Shakespeare. People told me once you take a Shakespeare class, you'll like him more. No, I like him less. I have to take this class to graduate. Basically, the play that I read this month was Othello. This is a story about a man who gets really jealous for no reason because this other man is manipulating him, and then Othello, who's the jealous man, kills his wife in retribution for something that she never did, because this other guy, Iago, was telling him that she did do it, and then instead of asking her if she did it, he kills her. See how stupid that is? Women in Shakespeare hardly have any agency at all, and it's hard for me as a woman to read Shakespeare and know that if I were cast in that, or if this were me in the past, like happening to me, I would be the person, the woman who is dead. I would be the woman who never got to speak. I would be the woman who was raped. Like, so it's less enjoyable reading it from the perspective of I can relate to the situation of the woman who was raped more than the guy who has agency and power. You know what I mean? You know how that's a little bit tricky to deal with? So I think I gave Othello 2 stars. Okay, I also read Twelfth Night by Shakespeare. What is this one even about? I don't remember what this one is about. I think this one is about a woman who cross-dresses, pretends to be a man. It's just a giant love triangle because she falls in love with a man falls in love with another woman, this woman falls in love with this man, but this man is actually a woman. This woman has a twin who falls in love with this woman. Very confusing. I didn't care for it at all. That's basically the point of Twelfth Night, is a giant love triangle. Okay, let's move on to more exciting things. Red, White, and Royal Blue. I read Red, White, and Royal Blue. I can never say this title. This was a reread for me. I read this last year. This was just as fun as I remember it being. I think I read it in like a day or maybe a day or two. A very quick, very fun read if you don't know what this is about. It is about the first son of America, so the president's son, and the Prince of England falling in love. It's beautiful. I gave it 4 stars. Sorry. Please don't hurt me. I gave it 4 stars last year, and then I thought, usually when I read a romance the second time I enjoy it more. I didn't. I gave it 4 stars again. And the reason is, the last 50 pages of this book, they felt rushed, they felt incomplete. I just didn't appreciate the last 50 pages of this book as much as I wish that I could, but they felt so fast. They felt like the book was being rushed at the end. It felt like there was like a page count. They couldn't get past the page count, and then they just had to rush the end of the book. I don't know. That's not true. I don't know. But that's what it felt like to me. It was like there was supposed to be more, but it was cut really short. And I think that's my main reason I got 4 stars. I think that it's underappreciated. The end of a romance is really difficult to write because I really appreciate seeing the couple together, seeing what I read for, which is them being together at the end, and a lot of authors just cut that part out. And I really don't appreciate that at all. And I'm not saying that's what Casey McQuiston did, but it felt a little bit like that. It felt a little abrupt. So that's my critique for this. But overall, I loved it. Highly, 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 highly recommend this book always, 100% forever. I read 2 Sarah J. Maas books this month. I have been promising a Sarah J. Maas vlog to you for a really long time. I would like to say that it is the worst thing to edit in the world. I should have been editing it as I went along and was filming, but I didn't, and I was stupid, and now it's the most difficult thing I've ever done. So, it's coming. It'll be here before the end of the year, I promise. But I've actually finished it. It's going to be a little bit of a series because I read a bunch of Sarah J. Maas books, but the most recent ones I read were A Court of Frost and Starlight. This is the epilogue, basically, to A Court of Wings and Ruin. So it's a nice short book. It's chronologically that comes after Court of Wings and Ruin and before Court of Silver Flames. I gave it 3 stars. It was cute. I honestly wish that all romance books had an epilogue like this. Like, this is the kind of epilogue I want for romance books, to see the couple together. Like, I want all of this. Like, it was cute. But it was not anything out of this world for me. The first half of it honestly drags a lot, which is the first experience I've had with dragging from Sarah J. Maas. I always feel like her work is I literally have something in my eyeball and I can't even handle it. I always feel like her work is very well paced, is very compulsively readable, and I just didn't have that experience with this one. But overall, it was a very cute time and I really enjoyed it. And then I read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This is not my copy of the book. Shout out to my friend Sarah for allowing me to borrow this until the paperback comes out, because I don't have the hardcover for the rest of them, so I want the paperback. I want to take a moment to talk about this book because I had the most unexpected experience with this book literally ever, in that I gave it 5 stars. Now, that might not be shocking to people who like Sarah J. Maas, but as a person who did not go into Sarah J. Maas having any conception that I could ever give one of her books 5 stars, giving this book 5 stars was a choice. It was a very deliberate choice, and I don't want to go too much into it because I have an entire video where I talk about this book for a long time, and I developed an entire theory in which I will judge the rest of the fantasy books that I read for eternity based on this book. Like, this book was great, and a lot of the reason it was great was because of the way that it diversified trauma within fantasy, because fantasy culture likes to override trauma. It likes to use women as pieces to push the white male protagonist's story forward without worrying about the trauma that the women endure when that happens. And this book just flipped the script. It made trauma the forefront of the book, and I was amazed. There's so much in this book that I loved that, I mean, it will be on my top 10 of this year. This book changed the way that I conceive literature. I know what you're thinking, people who don't like Sarah J. Maas, but just when my video comes out, just watch it and you will understand. And I am a person, by the way, who has studied literature and gender and sexuality studies at an academic level for 4 years. So this is not a light thing for me to do, but I'm doing it. 5 stars, Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Silver Flame. This took me about a year to read. I finally finished The Obelisk by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I'm finished with it. Everybody, please applaud or something, because this book took me so long to get through. I absolutely adored the 5th season. I thought it was incredible in everything, and N.K. Jemisin is an amazing writer. One of the most talented of our lifetime, I believe. But The Obelisk just didn't really work for me in the same way the 5th season did. It took me so long to get through, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I think this is more of a personal flaw than a problem with the book, because so many people, and the majority of people, enjoy this book, even if they do say it's I think this book is probably considered the weakest in the trilogy, and I think I would agree with that, even though I haven't read the 3rd one. I've heard the 3rd one is so good. So if you don't know about the Broken Earth trilogy, it is a fantasy trilogy which basically centers around the world in the way future. I don't know if it's supposed to be our world or not. I don't know. But basically, every once in a while, there's a season which basically is completely apocalyptic and takes over everything and destroys everything. And there are these people called Origines who are specifically connected with the earth and can control different elements and things like that, and it's really, really cool, and there's a lot more to it than that, but that's what I can say to you now in this brief synopsis. I only gave it 3 stars. I thought the end quarter was really, really good, but the first 75% I thought was really dragging, and I really could not connect to it at all. N.K. Jemisin's writing is very, I feel polarizing and also very unique and distinctive, and it has to be something very specific that you enjoy about her writing to really get into it. And I think it's good. She's a really great writer, but I just didn't have that same connection to it that a lot of other people do. But I would still highly recommend this series. Okay, next I'll talk about Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton for my American Realism class. This book basically follows a character named Ethan Frome who lives with his wife Xena, who has some kind of illness. It's never really specified, although it seems to be some kind of chronic pain illness, and he also lives with their housemaid person, but she's also like a cousin of Xena, whose name is Maddie. That's my name. Anyway, basically it is about Ethan being really rude to his wife all the time because she's sick, and basically wanting to run away with Maddie. I have such mixed feelings. When I finished this book, I gave it 4 stars. This is such an interesting case study to me, this book in particular, because I finished the book, I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was great. At the end of the book ends with Ethan basically being punished for being rude all the time to his wife. And I also really enjoyed that Xena was a representation of disability at a time when there was literally probably no disability representation, because this book was published in the early 1900s. But there's something interesting about reading a book, having an impression of it, then reading another of the author's writing and learning a little bit more about the writer and having a completely different impression. So after I read this book, I read an essay by Edith Wharton called The Vice of Reading, which is all about this kind of difference that she has between like real readers and mechanical readers, who are people just who read to read, and they read the most popular things and they agree with the most popular opinions. I highly recommend you read this essay. It is so frustrating, and I agree with like almost none of it, but it's so funny because we have these exact same debates today within the book communities, like who's really reading. Like the real people read The Secret History by Donna Tartt and stuff like and then the fake readers, like, they listen to audiobooks. Like, we have the same debate in the book community today, and it's completely not valid. If you're listening to an audiobook, if you're reading The Secret History, if you're reading romance, that's all reading. It's all the same. But basically Edith Wharton was this pretentious woman who was from this very well-known family, and she basically goes on to this rant in her essay about how poor people and uneducated people shouldn't read her literature because it's not for them. It's for people who will understand it and appreciate it for what it is. And if you're critiquing her work, then you're a poor, uneducated person, and that's a bad thing. So as you can see, very controversial opinions Edith Wharton has. And in some ways, those opinions don't affect the way that I felt about this book, because there is something to say about separating the art from the artist. That is an actual thing that happens in literary theory and criticism, because there is still value to this book, because I valued this book for the disability representation that it provided, so it was doing a good thing, right? Looking at it from the perspective of what Edith Wharton probably thought, she probably considered Xena, who was disabled and had a chronic illness, to be one of those lowly, poor, uneducated people who she didn't want reading her work. Like, Xena was not the hero that we read her as today. You know, impressions of literature had changed throughout history. I'm an English major. That's what's happening right now. I need to shut up because I'm an English major and I'll go on forever. But basically, that's my point, is it's important to look at historical context and authors' intentions when reading a book, but it's also okay to enjoy a book for what it is, in that this made me feel good when I read it because a person who was like me, who felt like an old hag, existed in literature. There's no answer. I want to say that so clearly, that there is no answer of the right way to interpret literature. There are so many different ways to interpret literature, and one of them could be focusing completely on the author's intentions, and another could be the way the book made you feel when you were reading it. Okay, end of that discussion. I have one more book. Just kidding, I actually have 2 books, but I'm going to talk about this one really quickly. Turn of the Screw by Henry James. Read this for my American Realism class. This is a horror book basically about a nanny who begins her job. Actually, she's a governess. She begins her job taking care of 2 kids, and all this weird stuff starts happening. She starts seeing ghosts, and it's crazy. It's a really fun book to analyze as literature, but it's not as fun to read. So if you want some good literary analysis, I would recommend, but otherwise, it's pretty average for the time that it was written. I gave it 3 stars, I think. So, yeah. Okay, last but not least, is this my only 5-star? No, I think I only read 2 5-star books this month, and it was this and A Court of Silver Flames. Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is going around everywhere now, so I won't talk about it for too long, but I basically read this for the book club that I'm in. This is about a woman who commits suicide, and in the places between death and life is this library where basically she can say to the librarian, I want to live a life where I didn't do this. Like, she can identify regret and say, I want to see what my life would be like if I had continued to professionally swim or whatever. That actually is one of the things that she does. And then she gets to live in that life for a while and see kind of what it was like. And then as she realizes, you know, maybe this life isn't everything that I thought it would be, that regret gets erased. This book scared me a lot because I have a lot of regrets in my life, and I loved it. I think that it's really poignant and really important, and if you're a person who lives with a lot of regrets and thinks about them often like I do, I would really recommend this book. At first I was worried that it would kind of give the impression that there is a possibility that the life that you're living now isn't worth living because of a regret. That is not at all the message of the story. She lives these other lives, and as she's living them, she sees the ways that they're different from her life now and the way that her life is good now as she's living it. And it's really important to see all of those small distinctions that could be different in your life because of a regret, and how those things can be negative too. We kind of romanticize these other versions of our lives in really unhealthy ways because we are unhappy with our situation now. But I mean, there's good in literally every single version of your life, and the one that you're living now is worth living no matter what you think. Wow, that got really deep really quick, but I gave this 5 stars. I thought it was really, really incredible, and I'd really highly recommend it. So those are all the books that I read last month in October. Let me know what you read in October, what some of your favorite books or least favorite books were from October. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you have similar thoughts, if you have different thoughts. I'm totally open to having a constructive and civil discourse in the comments below. But other than that, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great day, I hope you have a great week, and I hope you have a great life, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye!